Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a real head scratcher. You know, the identity of Bitcoin's creator.
The mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, exactly. Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, you've probably heard a ton of theories out there.
Oh, yeah.
But this one is particularly interesting and controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Some sources point to a man named Paul LaRue.
Okay.
And he's a figure who kind of straddles the worlds of high tech and international crime.
That's fascinating. What I find captivating about this whole deep dive is how it blends true crime with the world of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Buckle up, because we're diving into a life that reads like a spy thriller.
Oh, yeah.
And right at the center of it all is this question: could this man be the brain behind Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's the big question. Before we get into all the juicy details, though, for those who may need a quick refresher, Bitcoin is a digital currency that operates independently of any central bank or government.
Mm-hmm.
It was created in 2008 by this elusive Satoshi Nakamoto, whose true identity has remained a mystery ever since.
A mystery to this day.
So now back to Paul LaRue.
Okay.
He's been called a programming genius and a ruthless criminal mastermind.
Wow.
And some people believe that those two sides of him might actually be connected by Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's the theory, right? So let's start with the basics. Who is Paul LaRue?
Yeah.
He was born in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, in 1972.
Right.
He was given up for adoption and developed a fascination with computers at a young age.
Really? So, like, early on?
Oh, yeah. By his late teens, he was already writing complex code and even created his own video game.
Wow.
So even back then, you can see he had this knack for operating in the digital world. You know, creating things from scratch.
Yeah, that kind of early interest in computers definitely fits the profile of someone who could go on to create something like Bitcoin, right?
It makes you wonder, right?
But you mentioned he was also a criminal mastermind.
Yes.
How did that side of him develop?
Well, in the late 90s, he created E4M. This encryption software, which he actually released for free.
Wow.
Encryption essentially scrambles data, making it unreadable without a special key.
Okay.
Think of it like a digital lockbox.
Gotcha.
E4M was a powerful tool, and it really hinted at LaRue's deep understanding of cryptography, a field that's absolutely essential to Bitcoin.
Okay, so he clearly had the technical skill.
Oh, absolutely.
But how does encryption software lead to a life of crime?
Well, that's where things take a darker turn.
Oh.
While LaRue was developing E4M, he was also building a vast criminal empire.
What?
We're talking drug trafficking arms, dealing illegal logging, even whispers of hits being ordered.
Oh, way.
This wasn't some small-time operation. This was a global network, and LaRue was at the top pulling the strings.
Oh, wow.
He was known for being incredibly intelligent and organized, but also ruthless and paranoid.
It sounds like a movie.
It does, doesn't it? He went to great lengths to keep his identity hidden and his operations compartmentalized.
Yeah.
He used aliases, shell companies, a network of loyal followers who were often kept in the dark about the bigger picture.
Wow. It's hard to imagine how he managed to keep all of that under wraps for so long.
I know, right?
It sounds like he was incredibly skilled at covering his tracks.
Oh, for sure.
But if he was so good at being anonymous, why do people think he might be Satoshi?
That's where the theory gets really interesting.
Okay.
Proponents of the LaRue's Satoshi theory argue that he had both the technical skills and the motivation to create Bitcoin.
Okay, I'm listening.
So imagine this. You're running a global criminal enterprise like LaRue's. You're generating massive amounts of cash that needs to be laundered.
Right.
Traditional banking systems are too risky because they leave a trail.
Oh, I see.
So what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
You create a decentralized, anonymous digital currency like Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
It's the perfect solution for someone in LaRue's position.
It's like he created the perfect tool for his own criminal needs.
Exactly.
It's almost too perfect. But if he is Satoshi and sitting on a potential fortune in Bitcoin, why hasn't he tried to cash out?
Well, that's where things get even more intriguing.
Okay.
LaRue was arrested in 2012.
Okay.
And is currently serving a 25-year sentence.
Oh, wow.
Some people believe his imprisonment explains why the early Bitcoin fortune associated with Satoshi has remained untouched.
So are you saying that he's just biding his time waiting to access his Bitcoin riches once he's out?
It's certainly a possibility.
Wow.
And there are other pieces to this puzzle that make this theory even more compelling.
Like what?
Well, for example, LaRue was known to use the alias Solotshi.
Solotshi.
Which is strikingly similar to Satoshi, don't you think?
That is a pretty big coincidence, especially given all the other connections.
Right.
But hold on, I have to play devil's advocate here. Couldn't someone else have created Bitcoin and simply vanished?
Absolutely, and there are plenty of people who find the LaRue connection to be circumstantial and unconvincing. So in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore the counter-arguments to the LaRue theory.
Okay.
We'll also examine other potential Satoshi candidates, including a man who received the very first Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi himself.
Wait, the very first Bitcoin transaction?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm real hooked. This is getting good. All right, so we've laid out a pretty compelling case for why Paul LaRue might be Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
But as with any good mystery,
right,
there are always alternative explanations and other suspects to consider.
Exactly.
So what are some of the counter-arguments to the LaRue theory?
Well, for starters, the evidence linking LaRue to Bitcoin is largely circumstantial. It's intriguing, no doubt.
Yeah.
But it doesn't definitively prove he's Satoshi.
Right. You're right. It's all very connected dots.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence would be considered more compelling?
Think about it this way. To definitively prove someone is Satoshi, you'd need something like access to Satoshi's original Bitcoin wallet, a confession from the person themselves, or perhaps irrefutable evidence linking LaRue's coding to the original Bitcoin source code.
Yeah.
Those would be game changers.
Yeah, I see. So while the timing of Satoshi's disappearance and LaRue's arrest is suspicious, it doesn't prove a direct link.
Exactly. And beyond that, some people argue that Satoshi's writing style and the values expressed in the Bitcoin white paper just don't align with LaRue's known personality and actions.
Now that you mention it, Satoshi's writings do come across as idealistic, almost utopian.
Yeah.
There's this emphasis on creating a more equitable financial system.
Right.
Free from the control of banks and governments. It is hard to reconcile that with the image of a ruthless criminal mastermind.
Precisely. And that brings us to other prominent Satoshi candidates.
Okay.
One name that comes up frequently is Hal Finney.
Hal Finney.
He was a renowned cryptographer.
Okay.
And get this, he received the very first Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi.
Wait a minute. He was the first person to receive Bitcoin from Satoshi. That's more than just a coincidence.
Right. It certainly makes him a strong contender.
Yeah.
Finney was deeply involved in the cypherpunk movement, which advocated for the use of cryptography as a tool for privacy and social change.
Interesting.
Cypherpunks believed that strong encryption could empower individuals and challenge the control of governments and corporations.
Okay.
Sound familiar?
It does. It aligns with some of the core ideas behind Bitcoin.
Right.
Like decentralization and individual empowerment.
Exactly. And to add another layer of intrigue, Finney lived just a few blocks away from a man named, wait for it, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Whoa, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's wild. So are we saying this Satoshi Nakamoto was the real deal?
It's possible.
And Hal Finney was just using his name as a cover?
That's one theory.
Wow.
Some people believe Finney might have been working with the real Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay.
Or that he was even ghostwriting for him.
Wow.
Others think it's just an incredibly strange coincidence.
Okay, my head is spinning. So we have a brilliant cryptographer who receives the first Bitcoin transaction, lives down the street from someone named Satoshi Nakamoto, and is deeply involved in the cypherpunk movement, which shares many of Bitcoin's core values. It all seems to add up.
It does, doesn't it? But like any good puzzle, there's a twist.
What's the twist?
Finney, on his deathbed, denied being Satoshi.
So was he protecting someone?
Maybe.
Or did he have his own reasons for keeping silent? It's frustrating not knowing for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this Satoshi mystery so fascinating, isn't it? He's like, we're peeling back layers of a digital onion, and with each layer we find more questions than answers.
You hit the nail on the head. The lack of a definitive answer is part of the allure, but let's not forget about the other potential Satoshi candidates.
Right. Who else is on the short list?
Two other names often mentioned are Adam Back and Len Sassaman. Adam Back is the CEO of Blockstream, a company deeply involved in Bitcoin development. And his work on Hashcash, a system designed to prevent spam, is seen as a precursor to some of the concepts used in Bitcoin.
So he's got the technical background and the connections to the Bitcoin world.
He does.
What about Len Sassaman?
Len Sassaman was a brilliant programmer and a dedicated snooferpunk. Tragically, he passed away in 2011.
Oh, wow.
Some people believe he might have been involved in the early development of Bitcoin.
Okay.
But chose to remain anonymous due to his strong beliefs in privacy and individual freedom.
Okay, so we have a lineup of brilliant minds, each with their own compelling connections to the world of Bitcoin and cryptography.
Mm-hmm.
LaRue, with his mastery of encryption and his need for an untraceable currency.
Yeah.
Finney, with his early involvement in the Bitcoin project and his proximity to someone named Satoshi Nakamoto.
Right.
Back with his technical expertise and connections to Bitcoin development.
Uh-huh.
And Sassaman, with his dedication to privacy and his possible early involvement in the project.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It's almost overwhelming trying to keep track of it all.
It is a lot to take in.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to make sense of all this information and draw our own conclusions about who Satoshi Nakamoto might be?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll weigh the evidence, consider the motivations, and delve into the possible implications of each candidate's potential involvement in the creation of Bitcoin.
Sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover. Okay, so we've explored some pretty compelling arguments for Paul LaRue being Satoshi Nakamoto, but we've also heard some pretty strong counterpoints. And
even considered other possible candidates.
We have. It's like we've assembled this puzzle with all these fascinating pieces, but some are still missing,
Right.
Making the full picture unclear.
Exactly. And it feels like we're right on the edge of a breakthrough, but then we hit another dead end. So where do we go from here? How do we weigh all this evidence and decide who we think Satoshi really is?
Well, there's no magic formula, is there?
Right. But I think we can try to look at each potential candidate's motivations.
Okay.
What would driven them to create Bitcoin in the first place?
Yeah.
LaRue, for example, had a clear need for an untraceable digital currency.
Uh-huh.
It would have been the perfect tool for laundering his ill-gotten gains.
That's true. And his deep knowledge of encryption and his talent for staying hidden make him a very strong contender.
Right.
But what about someone like Hal Finney? What would have motivated him?
Well, Finney was a true believer in the power of cryptography to create a more private and secure world. He was deeply involved in the cypherpunk movement and saw Bitcoin as a way to challenge the control of governments and financial institutions.
Yeah.
His motivation seemed to align more closely with the idealistic vision laid out in the Bitcoin white paper.
So, LaRue, driven by practical needs. Finney, driven by ideology.
It's an interesting contrast, isn't it?
It's interesting to think about how those different motivations might be reflected in the way Bitcoin was designed and launched.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have someone like Adam Back, whose work on Hashcash laid some of the groundwork for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
His motivation might have been more about pushing the boundaries of technology and seeing what was possible.
And what about Len Sassaman? We didn't get to delve too deeply into his story.
Yeah, Sassaman was a fascinating figure, a brilliant programmer and a staunch advocate for privacy. He saw cryptography as a way to empower individuals and protect them from surveillance.
Yeah.
It's possible he saw Bitcoin as a tool for achieving those goals.
Right.
Tragically, he took his own life in 2011. So we'll never know for sure what role, if any, he played in the creation of Bitcoin.
It's sad to think that we might never have definitive answers to some of these questions.
It is.
But even without knowing for sure who Satoshi is, isn't it amazing to think about the impact Bitcoin has had on the world?
It really is. This technology born from mystery and shrouded in secrecy has sparked a revolution in finance and technology. It's challenged the way we think about money and value, and its influence continues to grow.
It's incredible to think that we might never know for certain who set this revolution in motion.
I know.
So what happens next? Where does the search for Satoshi go from here?
Well, that's the beauty of it. The search continues.
Yeah.
New evidence might emerge. New theories will be proposed, and perhaps one day the mystery will be solved.
I guess that's the nature of a good mystery, isn't it? It keeps us guessing, keeps us searching, keeps us engaged.
For sure.
Maybe part of the magic of Bitcoin is that its creator chose to remain anonymous, leaving us to grapple with the questions and draw our own conclusions.
Yeah, maybe Satoshi knew that the mystery itself would be part of the allure, adding to the legend of Bitcoin. Or maybe it was simply a matter of wanting to protect their privacy and let the technology speak for itself.
Whatever the reason, it's clear that the quest to unmask Satoshi Nakamoto will continue to captivate and intrigue us. Maybe one of our listeners will be the one to finally crack the code.
It could happen. You never know.
That would be incredible. Well, dear listeners, we've examined the evidence, considered the possibilities, and explored the motivations of some of the most likely Satoshi candidates. Now it's your turn. Who do you think is behind the mask of Satoshi Nakamoto? What do you believe is the true story behind the creation of Bitcoin? We encourage you to continue your own deep dive into this captivating mystery. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop searching for answers.